Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons review show. A thrilling encounter to go through from West Ham nil, Everton nil. Surprisingly, there's actually quite a few things we took away from the game. Not many positives. I'd say there were a few things we've taken away from it that are inclinations that things are still not going right under Julian Lopetegui. But we're going to break it down step by step throughout the game, give you our thoughts and feelings on the game itself. And yeah, if you enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, all of that jazz. And yeah, let's start with the lineup, Sloth, as we normally do. Interesting how we actually lined up. There was obviously rumours of late fitness tests for Todibo and Bowen. They obviously passed those and were in the team. Ariola's still out injured. Fabianski was in goal. So same back four we're used to seeing. Souček came back into the midfield three with Paqueta, Rodriguez and Souček, and then Somerville, Antonio, Bowen as the front three. So to be honest, this was probably as good as it could have got in terms of like a starting 11 with the players we had available. We shifted away from the back three back into a back four. Any surprises with that lineup, or were you happy when those lineups were announced before the game?
Look, I think we covered quite a lot in our preview for this when we were talking about the lineup, and as much as I think that rating for Paqueta in particular is quite deceptive, I just think when I look at that 11, there is no real ramification for poor form. And, we'll kind of go into some of the poor performances that there were. But I think while that is probably the sort of shape we're going to take going forward, and rightly so in my opinion, I just think that there needs to be a bit of a kick up the backside for a number of those players, and there needs to be rotating to try and do that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, it was, it was a strange game, wasn't it? I mean, the first half was completely flat. Second half was a bit better, as we're going to get into, but still not good enough. And, when we look at the overall stats from the game, 49% possession at home to Everton, a team that we said in the preview averaged 40% possession so far in the Premier League, is staggering. Our expected goals were 0.83 compared to their 1.11, 11 shots to their 18, 6 on target to their 4, 2 big chances missed from us. And we had slightly more passes and one more corner, but you can see the shot kind of heat map there. We're obviously the claret side and Everton are the blue side. So you can see the number of shots that Everton had in comparison to us. It was, to be honest, it was a pretty poor game throughout. I think we predicted it. It wasn't one for match of the day, and it definitely wasn't one for match of the day. I don't even think anyone probably watched the 3-minute highlights on Sky Sports, but it was a really poor. Let's kind of go with the first half stuff, because I picked out a few things that I want us to go through, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it as well, because there were a couple of standout players in the first half for the wrong reasons. And the first person I want to speak about is Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Is someone we've spoken about in recent weeks as being a little bit lazy, a little bit switched off, not the same Aaron Wan-Bissaka we saw in the first 2 or 3 games when he first came to West Ham. And let's just take a look at why we're saying this and what's happened because of that from what we saw in the first half, because this is 3 minutes into the game. Paqueta's gone down, rolling around. There was nothing wrong with him, of course. And then, we've got possession here. And Wan-Bissaka plays a really poor pass back to Kilman, which gets intercepted. Wan-Bissaka, you can see here, he's stepping in to receive the ball back, even though it's been intercepted. And then you're thinking, right, we're going to have to recover here. Look at the space. We've just got Emerson and Kilman there, and Todibo out of shot as well. But what's the recovery going to be like from this team, and in particular Wan-Bissaka? If we just fast forward it a little bit, you can see here, this is 3 minutes 30 into the game, Sloth, and he's pretty much jogging back. He's been overlapped. You can see there. You can see Somerville sprinting back as well. Souček sprinting back. Everyone's kind of busting the gut. And Wan-Bissaka was just ambling back. And you see it gets to this point. Everton actually have a shot. It doesn't result in a goal. But why? How is this happening 3 minutes 30 into a game? And how can your energy levels and attitude be that poor 3 minutes into a game?
I can only imagine that he has been told by Lopetegui to try and be this attacking outlet as a right back. Now, there are multiple reasons why that just drives me absolutely crazy. First of all, even as an attacking outlet, you can get back and defend. You can get closer to the play. You can even try and press the man with the ball, the man in possession. But also, that early into a game, first of all, it's your own cock up that's giving them this chance, the least you can kind of do is, shoulder it and chase back and try and defend and make up for it.
Exactly.
But also, the very root of this problem for me is you signed one of the strongest 1v1 defenders in the league, and you've asked him to completely change his game. So he's not going to get back and make the challenges, and you're going to play him out wide and as a wing back. I simply do not understand the decision making in that. I think that is completely and utterly incompetent. I can kind of see that you would look at him and go, oh, he's quick, he's strong, he's good in 1v1s. So maybe we can add a bit more attacking to his game. And
does that excuse the individual attitude though, Slough? Not getting back when losing the ball in that situation.
It doesn't. But if you don't know how you can be the outlet for your side, then that can be an incredibly it can be a really interesting learning process. And like we saw when Antonio was asked to go there, although it's not quite the same because obviously he was a winger, but if you're trying to add attacking elements to your game instead of the stronger sides of your game that you know very well, then it's a really kind of tough thing to master, especially when you're doing it in the Premier League. But for me, I just think the lack of application there is unforgivable. And we've had a number of players who do it over the years, and I just think that when you have a player like Soufal who has actually recorded multiple assists across a season, whether or not you're trying to put him in the shop window or basically wait for his contract to run down is irrelevant. You're sacrificing a team performance for essentially, the club's or the fact that the club could lose him for a free, and he could get a good contract. So I don't really understand why that dynamic has been thrown under the bus for something that isn't really clicking and is very clearly costing us good chances for the opposition.
Yeah, I think it's, as you say, playing Wan-Bissaka higher and trying to have him almost as this high attacking wing-back outlet. It's causing these issues because he doesn't have, we can already see he doesn't have the consistent application to get back. It is a lot of demand, it's a huge demand on someone to go up and down constantly for 90 minutes. We're not saying that, but that first screenshot is someone giving the ball away 3 minutes into a game. The first thing you do is sprint back. You don't jog back. That's basics of a football match. And
so for a counterpoint, like for a good example of kind of what we mean, someone who I think is incredibly overrated defensively, but makes up for it in his attacking and link-up play is Kyle Walker. I think he is a disaster of a defender when he is on the ball, except for when he sprints and doesn't have to think. This is a case of someone who is trying to overthink and add an attacking side to his game that isn't naturally there. Now, Kyle Walker had the speed to make up for that. And he could put in challenges that were important for Manchester City and all the teams that he played for. But Aaron Wan-Bissaka, first of all, he doesn't have that electric speed. But also, you're asking him to do something that he's not done before. And it's not a case of just utilising an asset that a player has, like outstanding speed, to be able to get back and forth. It's adding an entirely new element of coaching into his game. And I just don't understand why we've done that, or why
I just think there needs to be a balance. I think Wan-Bissaka's shown already that he can go forwards and he's got the technical ability to do it. I don't know if he's got a consistent, application and attitude to be this attacking wing back. I don't think that, as you say, I don't think that's his nature to do that. But I think it's the other side. It's when we lose the ball, it's recovering, because as you mentioned, Wan-Bissaka, everyone knows 1v1, he's been one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League of the last few years. When he's in a situation where he's just sitting in and has to defend one-on-one, it's not about, recovering or getting back into shape or these things that he's having to now do under Lopetegui because he's being this attacking fullback. So yeah, I think it works both ways. But we'll move on to the second clip as well, because again, this kind of highlights what's going on, and West Ham just causing their own issues. This is again like 8 minutes into the game, deep corner, Bowen chases it. He plays a really poor pass into Wan-Bissaka first of all. So Wan-Bissaka's having to recover. Wan-Bissaka does make the challenge to recover, but when he slides in for the ball, obviously it gets intercepted by Everton. And then let's again look at the recovery, look at the attitudes. So here it looks like, look, Wan-Bissaka's going in. He looks like he's ready to sprint back in, which is good. Then we just move it forwards a little bit where the ball gets played past him. And then it's almost like his mentality is, right, the ball's past me. Now it's time to just jog back in. At this point, it should be triggering in your mind. We need to sprint back here because we've got a massive counter-attack issue on our hands. Look at Somerville next to him there. This is kind of going to show you the contrast between the two players and the attitude and where they end up. You can see here Wan-Bissaka still really jogging in. Hasn't really sprinted back. He's kind of done like a 3/4 pace jog back in, whereas Somerville was absolutely sprinting back in. And because of what Somerville's done, you can see here the difference in positions, that Somerville's overtaken Wan-Bissaka at this point. And if Somerville had done what Wan-Bissaka done, this is a goal for Everton. This is 1-0 Everton if Somerville doesn't get back in here. And he makes an outstanding challenge, and he's sprinted 70, 80 yards, 90 yards to do it. And he's overtaken Wan-Bissaka in the process. So look, I'm not blaming Wan-Bissaka for losing the ball initially, because it was an absolutely terrible pass from Bowen, and Wan-Bissaka had to make the challenge in. It's then your recovery. It's then how you react to that situation. And this just happens too many times. And this is less than 10 minutes into a game, Sloth. So that's where I'm talking about the attitude of Wan-Bissaka. But on the flip side, we got to praise Somerville there for his defensive work rate. And we mentioned it, didn't we, in the summer, that he's someone that's also going to put in the shift defensively and help out his team. And that's exactly what he showed there in that clip, and saved a goal from happening for Everton.
Yeah, I think he was by far our brightest spark yesterday. And
yeah,
if you go back to the beginning of those pictures of Wan-Bissaka, I had a discussion on Twitter the other day, and if you look at the position when Wan-Bissaka gives it away and where he starts off from, now Doucouré is behind Somerville there, and look, I understand that Doucouré is quick when he gets up to a sprint speed, but he's not that quick that I don't think that distance there is recovery. Like, he can stay well ahead of Doucouré. But if you fast forward, so if you go to the next little picture, if he sprints there, he can manage to cut out the pass because he can see Doucouré in his eye line. He's already given him he's already given up those extra yards that he had on him. And if he had sprinted from when he lost the ball, which is exactly the sort of thing that I would expect a well-coached, hard-working team to do, he cuts out the pass. Because if you go to the next picture, he's 2 yards off him, which is exactly the position that Doucouré, distance wise, was earlier. So he's now got 5 yards or 5 yards or so over Wan-Bissaka. He's made up 7 yards. There's no way he's that quick in comparison to Wan-Bissaka at a full speed. So I think it's a shocking lack of effort. And I kind of mentioned that I think alarm bells should really be ringing out for a lot of the people at the club seeing that. And I'm not saying that Wan-Bissaka isn't culpable to switching off or not always putting in 100% effort, because I think any player can switch off at moments. But that is so early on that I don't know how that's excusable.
And it's happening on a regular basis. I think that's the issue as well.
Yeah, and I think at least with look, it is on that left-hand side. Emerson should be doing more, but I do think that it's one of those situations where Emerson tends to hug the touchline more. So he's then got to make up the distance in multiple ways. Or if he's inside, you're almost kind of getting in the way of one another if one of them wants to make a challenge or you're impacting decision making. If you're just doing nothing, like a half-hearted job, then for me, that's not good enough.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it would just kind of, this summarized and kind of showed exactly what we were doing in the first half and the lack of intensity across the board. And our application to the game at home to Everton was incredible. I mean, we're going to touch on when our first chance came, but we saw last week against Forest, our first shot came just before half time. The same thing happened against Everton. It took till like the 43rd, 42nd minute for us to have an attempt on goal home to Everton, which is incredible. But it came from our own application and our own ways of playing. And again, we can highlight here the lack of intensity and the lack of energy in the squad. I mean, this is what 11 minutes into the game. We're sitting in kind of a compact shape with Souček and Guido as the double pivot. Obviously, Paqueta was playing further forwards in the first half, almost as the number 10 off of Antonio. But it was just so easy to play through. And this picture right here kind of summarized everything. We're playing at home to Everton in the 11th minute, and this is the setup and the approach of the team. Antonio's completely isolated, which we've said is obviously a massive issue for any striker. And we're just so deep, like even Somerville and Paqueta like walking out, Souček jogging out, Bowen kind of sitting in the shape. They've been told to do this. I have no doubt because of the recent performances and the recent results and the pressure that was Julian Lopetegui's been under in the media. You know, if we lose this game, he's going to be gone. I think this was intentional by Julian Lopetegui to try and nullify or be a little bit more conservative because we didn't see that flying high energy press that we have seen. And we're not saying we want to see that over 90 minutes, but this is just inexcusable at home to Everton. And, you know, we move it forwards here. This is literally a couple seconds after that screenshot. You know, we're shifting over. We're being very lazy about it. The gaps are just huge. And Braithwaite's like, okay, I'll just walk through you then. He just literally walks past Antonio. There's so much space because we're so deep. There's so much space between the defense, midfield, and Antonio being isolated. And then it's just a simple couple passes and they're through. And you can see here, look, Paqueta, Somerville, Bowen. It's just so easy to play through West Ham, even when we're trying to be compact. And it's because of the lack of intensity and the lack of awareness. And, you know, they end up having a shot in the end from Ndai, who I thought played pretty well on the left-hand side. But it's just a lack of energy across the board, Slough. And why do you think that 11 minutes into the game against Everton, we're finding ourselves in a situation like this where Everton literally just got a box midfield of four there with their two centre-backs, pinned us back, and we're just happy to sit in our shape with an isolated striker. I mean, this is something you see away at Man City, not at home to Everton, right?
I just think it's really poor coaching. You know, I kind of mentioned on a previous video that if you make yourself, if you are being beaten easily and, you know, the midfield maybe isn't the quickest, then what you do is you make it so that you cannot be played through. You make it compact, you make it tight, and you press coordinatedly. So you will go, and, you know, one of you might anchor point, but two of you will press and try and close down gaps for to close down a pass. This is just awful. Like, you know, and Tony Carr is one of the people who, there's a great video that he does all about coaching, and part of it is specifically dealing with this issue. You know, if you are being beaten that easily, you make it so you can't be played through. You have to force them out wide. Well, we force them out wide, but then there's no plan after that. They're out wide. They can't hurt us there. No, they can still hurt you. It's just a case of you make it so they can't play through you. And we just seem to have absolutely no plan. Or at least we don't follow through with a plan. And, you know, Antonio yesterday, as someone who is there to lead a press, you know, you can be isolated, but you can still lead a press. You can still pressure people.
It was not in this situation, though, Slough. Look, what can you do there?
I'm not saying like in that specific situation. That would be very harsh for me to say. It would be unfair. But what I am saying is that, you know, in general, your forward leads press, and, you know, we've seen that with Antonio for quite a few seasons. For me yesterday, it was a stark contrast to, say, 2 seasons ago when he was doing even lockdown season, when he was leading a press from the front, closing down angles for passing. But someone like Paqueta should be in behind him, basically, you know, closing down the option, at least on one side, for that defender. So you know, you're going to have to go wide. You're going to have to, you can't go through the middle. You're going to have to go wide. I just think it's a total lack of communication. And I think on top of that as well, you know, we mentioned it multiple times, but the coaching, it doesn't look like there's a plan there. It looks like it's just sort of, okay, the midfield's going to do this. This is what you guys do. Okay, what about working in tangent with the right back? No, that's not going to happen. No, we're not going to do that.
Our team isn't dynamic enough to do it. Like we look at our midfield three of I sound like an absolute broken record, but Souček and Paqueta and Guido is not dynamic enough as a midfield three. It's just not. If you're wanting to play this certain way, and you know we saw it again here. Like this is 40 minutes into the game, and it's the same patterns evolving. Like you can see like the pairs there. Obviously Souček and Guido in the middle as the pivot, Paqueta and Antonio as the 10 and 9, Bowen and Wan-Bissaka on the right hand side. And it's just like, it's incredible the amount of space we're affording teams. And look at just look at the gaps that we're leaving and allowing Everton's midfield to come and collect the ball in. You know, you've got Ndiaye just coming in and picking up the ball where he wants. You've got Mangala and Idrissa Gueye in the midfield there, just chilling, just so much space, about 10, 15 yards circle around Gueye in the middle of the screen there. You've got Young coming in, tucking in because he can. And it's just incredible. And look at the reaction when we do receive the ball with Fabianski. Look, Fabianski is like, right, let's get going. Let's add a bit of intensity or energy into our play. Emerson, head down. Paqueta, head down. Kilman, head down. Todibo facing the wrong way. Wan-Bissaka squared up. Guido, head down. The only one really is Souček there trying to clap and encourage. But it's just that right there as a screenshot encapsulated the entire first half and the attitude and everything that was wrong with our approach at home to a side that is really struggling, really struggling, and isn't one of the better teams in the division. The way you approach a football match like that, I mean, it really makes me question what's going on. And I mean, we mentioned it near the beginning of the video about, you know, did we create some chances in the first half? Were we effective when we did have the ball? No, we didn't have any shots until this point here. And this is the 43rd, 44th minute of the game. And it literally comes from Paqueta taking on this player who does very well, passing a lovely pass through to Antonio. And then this is the situation. This is our best chance of the half. I mean, look at it's just incredible. I mean, it comes from a transition that Paqueta's done really well to find Antonio in. Antonio's done very well to drive past into the space, take on a few players and get into this position. Bowen's obviously sprinted, busted a gut to get up and try and get involved in the action. And that actually resulted in our first shot. Bowen, it was quite an easy save in the end for Pickford. But it took something like this to actually create a chance against Everton. That's pretty alarming, no, Sloth?
Yeah, and you know, I mentioned it just before with a coordinated press. And yes, you know, you can say, oh, it's a good pass from Paqueta. But there should always be someone who is there as an outlet for Antonio, someone who, from a central position who can offer a link-up play with him. There is no one like within.
Well, that Paqueta was playing as the 10, wasn't he? He was meant to be that person, but I mean, we'll touch on it in a second half. But that's not him.
Yeah, and it's not him. But also, you need like this is one. I think this is one of the reasons that we've been calling for Kudus to go centrally because he would be there, or at least he would have the pace to make that up. And I think when you see, look, I think Guido he did some really good things yesterday. Some of his passing was great. And then he did some really bad things. His turning is like a baby giraffe. You know, he turns in stage and it's really, it's just not Premier League level. You know, you need to have players around him who can compensate for that. And we just don't have that. And it's, you know, it's really tough when you see such an immobile three in the middle, because when you do get chances like that, good moments, we're so exposed. And I think one of the bigger problems that this kind of flagged up is we used to talk about unsustainable football under David Moyes, where you're relying on a moment of brilliance from one player, or you're relying on someone to create their own chance and run, you know, like we were saying with Antonio. It seemed like yesterday we were doing that Like that's all we had. And there was no one who was on the same wavelength. There was no plan where it was, okay, Antonio's got the ball. We all break. We all go. Bowen's the only one who's really close to him. Somerville kind of tried to catch up, but he was deeper because he was defending. He anticipated that we were going to be under the cosh. So he got a longer distance to make up. I don't see how anyone could have watched that first half and gone, we can get something from this. Like, we can get the 3 points, because we were so bad. We didn't deserve the 3 points. And to be honest, it was a kind reflection on us that we got 1 point, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I agree. And yeah, as you said, in the stadium yesterday, it was pretty grim. It was a grim grey day, and it was just reflected with the performance. It was really bad. And we saw, as you mentioned, we were maybe expecting or looking to see if Lopetegui would change anything at half time, because he's been pretty proactive in doing that so far throughout his West Ham career when things haven't been going right. He stuck with the same 11 in the second half. And I think he already tried to be a little bit more aggressive with the press, but again, it highlighted the weaknesses rather than the strengths. So we've seen it before, and we've done a few of these now over the review shows of this season, and we've seen this press maybe 5-6 times when we've highlighted it. It happens quite a lot. So Bowen goes in on the centre back as the trigger once the ball gets played from Pickford. And then everyone kind of just goes in man for man. We've mentioned it about this man for man press. Souček's close into Gay. And then Somerville's partnered on the other centre back over there, Tarkowski. And then we move it forwards. The ball comes into Mykolenko. So that's the trigger for Wan-Bissaka to come in and play really high up. And then we find ourselves in this situation. I know it's a bit blurry, but bear with me. But you can see there the man for man press. Tadebo's gone in on the very right-hand side of your screen with Ndai. Guido Rodriguez is coming over to Calvert-Lewin with the ball here. And then you've got Kilman on Decore and Emerson over on the other side with the other the other winger whose name has eluded me. But yeah, this is basically what we do when we press in from like those situations. The issue we have is we're not very good at keeping possession of the ball under pressure or actually maintaining something once we've turned the ball over. So we actually win the ball here. Tadebo goes down, rolling around like he's got fouled, but he isn't fouled in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. And then Everton find themselves in this situation. It's a simple pass through to Calvert-Lewin. Again, just recovery, people not getting back in after a press. I'm going to be a little bit less harsh on Wan-Bissaka because he's just sprinted up and obviously been told to sprint up on their full back in the press. But again, when you know Tadebo's rolling around on the floor, you need to try and get back in and help your team. And again, a chance actually comes from that press that we just saw there. And the issues we have once we do press in that situation is like, right, we've got this idea of going man for man press. What about the second phase? What about when we win the ball? What about if there's a 50-50 we need to win in that situation? What do we do from that point? Because we've gone man for man, but what's the next step? And I think that's the main issue with this Lopetegui press. We don't know what the next step is. That isn't very clearly defined. So it's almost like we're trying to free ball it and hope for the best. But I think the intention kind of shifted there, but it wasn't consistent enough. And what you mentioned there, stuff about, under David Moyes, especially towards the end, we were relying on someone with an individual moment of brilliance to unlock a defense, or someone to take the game by the scruff of the neck. It was never really patterns of play or combinations that were unlocking teams on a consistent basis. And we saw that, it was so clear in this game that this was also the case. And you can see it here. When we find ourselves in these situations, and talk about Paqueta here and why we don't want Paqueta playing as a number 10, he's extremely ineffective in these positions. And you can see there the front four of Antonio, Paqueta, Bowen, and Somerville. Wan-Bissaka's got the ball. He's coming inside. What is the plan here? What is the situation? Because we don't have we've got Guido and Souček who aren't creative midfielders, who aren't going to, come into this space and pick those passes out. And then it just gets forced wide, really, to Somerville. And as you say, it's like, do something, create something. And Somerville does really well. He takes on about 3 players in this situation, goes down, isn't a penalty. And our biggest chance of the second half comes from a long-range strike from Guido Rodriguez because of that. So, I mean, it kind of, again, it shows that once you kind of alluded to it there, Sloth, is we're still relying on those individual moments of brilliance to create something. And too often we're seeing ourselves in situations like this when we're playing Paqueta as a 10 and we have a midfield of, say, Alvarez and Guido or Souček and Guido. it's not creative enough. You don't have that deep line playmaker to pick through or create or interlink between the attack and midfield. And you're then adding more reliability or over dependence on someone like Wan-Bissaka or Emerson to provide that attacking outlet, which is why we're getting caught, because our fullbacks are having to go, so wide and so high. And then we don't have the recovery in midfield, because you see like Paqueta and Antonio will just go into the box. Souček might drift into the box, and then you're just left exposed. So is that a big concern for you, Stoff, that we're still relying on, someone like Summerville to make something happen in that situation?
I think I don't know where to go with it, because I mentioned it many times yesterday, but all we seem to be doing is possession for possession's sake, and then hoping that someone creates that moment.
Yeah,
it's so poor. The amount of times that we got into their half and then there was a lack of movement, so we basically then just went, oh, actually, we'll pass it all the way back along the back line to try and go to the other side of the pitch. It was I think I counted at least 6 times we did it in the first half, and then I gave up. We were so lacking in creativity, and one of the things that Paqueta in particular did was he does this stupid lofted pass. He does a stupid little chip where he gets himself in a good position. He did it exactly the same against Spurs, and I'm pretty sure it led to their first goal. We were 1-0 up, and he tried to play in a pass, and the commentator went, "Oh, what a wonderful chip pass!" And it's like, he does it, but it gives away possession, and you've never seen a slower players try and get back when we give away possession. It's terrible. As you say, Summerville did really well, and I think we are far too reliant on this individual moment. But what really worries me is that under David Moyes, it seemed like we had a plan, or other players
a little bit more,
they would peel off their man and find a bit of space or pocket of space to get a pass in, or that little stupid lofted pass would work because the forward has seen that he's going to do that, and so I'll tuck back over here and run onto it. It didn't. Nobody is really working with one another, and I think that when you have a full pre-season to get your players working together, and when you are this far into the season, that you would expect it to be kind of coached into them, it's almost unforgivable. Like how they have not picked up on what each other are going to do, or what the potential is in that position is terrible. And I think it's really harsh on the players who look like they're actually caring and trying. Summerville was head and shoulders above the other players on the pitch. I thought Kilman had quite a good game defensively.
Yeah, those two were kind of the standouts.
But aside from that, it was players who looked like they didn't really want to be there. And
well, that kind of leads me on to my next point, Stuff. We've got one more clip to go through before we discuss that, but it was the attitude of a couple of the players that got substituted in the 67th minute. But just before that, again, Wan-Bissaka is one of those that we're going to talk about, but this is the 60th minute. And you can see here just how disjointed we were, and there was a lack of application, and we mentioned about Paqueta playing as that number 10. And I think Paqueta prefers playing deeper as well. Like, it's a mental thing. He gets more involved. He prefers being that kind of deep line creator. And when he's playing number 10, it's almost like he has the leniency to be a little bit more lazy and not drop back in, which is what we saw here. And, I just want to highlight Wan-Bissaka. He's gone square up with Mykolenko, okay? The ball gets played past him out wide. But look how easy it is. Like, Mykolenko's just run off the back of him. Wan-Bissaka then gets back in to cover for Todibo. Todibo's come out wide. Wan-Bissaka has a look over his shoulder at the runner, who was Mangala. You can see Mangala and Decore there. Mangala's about to make that run inside behind off his shoulder. He's seen him. He's done the look over the shoulder. But how does he get to this situation? Again, he just allows him to walk past. And this is a jog, by the way, from Wan-Bissaka, not a sprint. Mangala actually fakes the cross here, comes back onto his right foot, puts it back onto his left foot, then crosses it. And it comes, again, it could have easily been prevented from Wan-Bissaka. and it actually forces a really, really important save from Fabianski from a header. And that all comes again from a lack of effort from Wan-Bissaka. And before we get onto the changes, that kind of insinuated what was going wrong. And again, it's just a lack of application. That is the simple stuff that we're getting wrong. And players, as you mentioned, the attitude isn't there. And that was highlighted when the substitutes were made. So I think we made a triple substitution of Danny Ings, Carlos Soler, and Vladimir Coufal on for Wan-Bissaka, Guido, and Antonio. Antonio comes off fine, normal, great. Danny Ings comes on. But at the same time, when Wan-Bissaka's name was kind of read out, I don't know if anyone else saw this in the stadium, but he was talking to Todibo, and he just stood still for about 30 seconds talking to Todibo. I don't know what he was saying, but he wasn't coming off the pitch. I don't think he was happy. Like, clearly he wasn't happy. And when he did come off the pitch, he kind of like walked to the side and not directly to where the substitutes happened. He like just came off to the side of the pitch where he was closest to, and then walked like miles around Lopetegui, didn't address him at all, and just sat down. And like, for me, that is like, I would not play him next week for that type of thing. Like, he's clearly not got the respect of the manager, which is a completely different thing. But to drop a generational stinker like he did in this game, and to have the attitude to walk off the pitch thinking you're some like amazing fullback. Look, mate, there's a reason you've come to West Ham from Man United. It's not because you've been performing well at Man United. It's because you've been pretty crap. So I don't like that. Like, that attitude is a big problem for me. And the same with Guido. Look, his was a little bit more, I don't know. No, it wasn't more acceptable because he comes off and he's clearly frustrated. And again, I don't know if he did address Lopetegui or not when he come off. I didn't see, but all I saw was him like smash a water bottle, like kick it as he was coming off. Clearly frustrated that he come off. But again, it wasn't like he was performing particularly well and, you know, being this amazing destructor that he's labelled as. And I don't know, is there a bigger issue there at the attitude and, you know, the behind the scenes of how the players currently view Julian Lopetegui and how some of the players actually view themselves as better than they think they are? Because that's what I think there is at the moment.
Do you know what? I'm gonna be kind to Wan-Bissaka, because I think that when you're being asked to do a job that isn't your natural role on the team, I think it can be incredibly frustrating. But
he wants to be more expressive. He wants to be more attacking.
I don't think there is an excuse for that reaction. I thought it was embarrassing, to be honest. And I almost wonder if next week we should be putting him as the right centre back in a 3, because
I'll drop him.
I would love to be in a position to drop players out of form, but we don't have the squad to do that. Like, I just don't think
we were saying that for Paqueta though, weren't we?
Well, I think we're slightly stronger there. I think we're slightly better off.
Are we?
Yeah. Like, I mean, Calamity Mavropanos, as much as I love him at times, he's not exactly reliable.
Falcon come in.
Yeah.
Not that he performed well yesterday, but like I don't think like Wan-Bissaka's attitude in that game and application, I just wouldn't play him. Like, especially coming off the way he did.
I don't think there is the risk of it under Lopetegui, and I've said this. I've said it for weeks. There's no what's the word I'm looking for? There's no consequence. Yeah. There's no consequence for poor form at the moment. And this was a similar thing under David Moyes. So I'm not pretending that, you know, it's only just happened now. But
shouldn't there be consequence for coming off the pitch and not addressing your manager? Like, I'm not saying Lopetegui deserves, like, he doesn't have much respect from the West Ham fans, but you can't do that as a player.
No, I think that for a football manager, there's a difference between a player coming off the pitch disappointed or angry that they've not performed, or that they're coming off because they feel like they could have done more, and that's something that you kind of address behind closed doors. And if he says, oh, you know, there was, you know, I've made a change and I feel like Coufal has to come in because he deserves the opportunity, you know, it kind of hints at that, or there's some sort of nod and a wink as to why he's not in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
But I think that it's an issue behind closed doors. The manager will say to him, "What the hell was that about?" And he goes, he could be incredibly frustrated with himself. It could be an issue of he feels, I feel much better marking man to man, and you've asked me to go attacking, and I'm getting frustrated. It's these things. They're not. I don't know. That's fair enough. I don't think it's excusable, the behaviour,
No.
but I think that there can be underlying reasons for it, and they bubble to the surface. And I think it's better to address it as a manager, one-on-one with the player, than to just necessarily drop them because of it. And you can get the best from that. But I think, as I said, there has to be consequences for poor form. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be. I think it would be quite harsh to drop someone for a reaction to being substituted. Someone like Guido, who's not necessarily had a howler in recent weeks, whereas I think Wan-Bissaka has. I think it would be quite harsh to drop him just for getting annoyed that he came off. I think it's one of those things where if there is an issue with the manager or the coach of the football club not implementing his plan, or the players feel like he's not, performing.
We'll see.
It's something that needs to be dealt with behind closed doors, either at the top of the club or from Lopetegui himself.
Yeah. Well, one positive of the changes was it allowed, as we mentioned, Paqueta, he dropped deeper. Obviously, Souček went to more of the natural six, and Paqueta played a little bit further in front of him, and Carlos Soler came into the midfield three. But it changed something in Paqueta's mind. Like before that, he was performing really poorly, but it changed after this. And you can see here, he was dropping deeper. You can see like the substitutes there, and Paqueta highlighted. So Kufau, Ings have come on. Soler making runs in between the midfield and the Everton defence, which again, I thought that was probably Carlos Soler's best game in a West Ham shirt. Not that he did anything outrageous, but he looked a lot more comfortable playing in the midfield alongside Paqueta. And it just meant Paqueta had the freedom to drop in and find pockets of space. And after this point, Paqueta was instrumental to everything good we did and every chance we created. And the first one came from this situation where he dropped deep, he picked up the ball in this situation. And we said about Paqueta playing stupid passes in the final third or being a frustrating figure. One thing we've also said is he's one of the only players in this squad that will try or an attempt and a pass like this. And as long as it's done in moderation and you're trying it in the right situations, I think it's fine. But he plays an unbelievable pass through to Somerville from back there. And Somerville's first touch in between the fullback and defender is sensational again. Like his touch is incredible. It goes in front of him. He pushes it onto his left foot. He does everything right in this situation. Beats Pickford with his left foot, but it cannons off the post. And that was our first, I would say, big chance in the game. And it come from Paqueta dropping a little bit deeper and picking up the ball and finding an in-behind runner like Somerville, who, as you mentioned, was probably our brightest spark in the game alongside Kilman. So, again, does that highlight, and we're going to talk about the couple of Danny Ings chances at the end, but instantly Paqueta dropping deeper, it just gives him that confidence and freedom to play how he needs to play. And I just think that's the way he should be played going forwards under Lopetegui and this West Ham team.
Definitely. And this is why Paqueta is so frustrating to watch.
Yeah.
We all know he has the ability to do this. And I think when you have players who can read what he's going to try and do, or they're moving, to create space for him to pass into, that's fine. But when he's the most advanced and he's resorting to playing a silly little chip because he feels like that's the thing to do. He's not doing it because it's the best option. He's doing it because he feels that actually I'll just do this for shits and giggles, essentially. If this comes off, it will look good. There's no method to it. And I think that this is where him being deeper and having more players around him, he feels like he can try this as opposed to a silly little needless pass that will immediately give away possession. And the players around him also seemed to feel that as well. You could sense that when he played that pass, things sort of livened up and players were looking for that ball more. And
I think that's another key thing, isn't it? Like when you have a player deeper getting on the ball that has the ability to play those types of passes, instantly your mindset will change. Like if Somerville sees, I don't know, obviously no disrespect to Souček, but if he sees Souček pick up the ball in that situation, is he making that same run in behind? No. He sees Paqueta get the ball. Is he making that run? Yes. So it's like an instant application change, a mindset change. And, this came from, again, it's a subtle change, but it's something that I think we have to do going forwards. And I mentioned it before, like Paqueta was instrumental, not just like offensively in situations, but he also offers quite a lot defensively. We've said that before. He can get us stuck in. Obviously, his yellow cards are stupid, but he is someone that likes to get involved with the physical side of the game. And, we saw here, he wins the first header in the 86th minute because he's playing a little bit deeper, which then kind of has that snowball effect. And Carlos Soler wins a 50-50. I think in the first half, we lost about 60-something% of our duels to Everton, which is insane. I think in the second half, once the likes of Paqueta and Soler came on, Paqueta dropped deeper and Soler came on, we started to see a little bit of a difference in that midfield. And we started to win that battle. So again, Soler deserves credit for this. And then again, Paqueta started the move with his header. He then gets forward a little bit, but again, he's from a slightly deeper position and he plays a first time right-footed pass through here. Young's keeping Danny Ings on side. It's a fantastic pass. Danny Ings does everything right. And we said that from his substitute appearances so far. He's been very good. And he shoots with his left foot and it's a great save from Pickford. And it's just like those small things like Paqueta winning a header, Soler winning a 50-50. It results in chances like this. And we weren't doing that from the 67th minute, before the 67th minute. As soon as we made those changes, we started to see a difference. And I mean, it's just that sometimes it's the simple things, Sloth, that can make a big impact in a match like that.
Yeah, and I think that anyone who watched that final 20 minutes would be thinking, it's a totally different side. It's part of the reason that I think we've all kind of been calling for Paqueta to play deeper and Kudus to go central, because you can get the players around Paqueta for him to be able to feel confident to make those passes. You can put Souček as the anchor point next to him as well, and he can be a big physical, basically a ramming rod and a battering ram, and run at players. He can try and win the aerial balls. But it's this sort of lack of faith I feel that they all have in the players around them that is really telling. And if I'm Danny Ings and I've watched the Antonio performance, I'm thinking, why am I not getting a start? Because look, although I don't want to seem like I'm just going in on Antonio every single week, but at the end of the day, your job is to score goals, and your job is if you're not scoring goals, it's to be involved, create them, and be a focal point for your team that you can at least sort of drag a few centre backs away. And he's anonymous at the moment, so.
I think the thing with Ings is we've seen like he's been good as a substitute, and when he has been given a chance to start as a solo striker, it's just not the same because he's coming on in like the 70th minute or whatever against fresh legs, against tired legs, sorry, and he's got more space to work with. Again, I'm not saying Antonio should be starting. I think we should. I mean, this is a bigger issue, but we should have signed the striker in the summer that fitted the mold effectively and wasn't a 30-year-old that has an Achilles issue and lots of injury issues and blowing 30 million on him. But that's a different point. But yeah, I mean, look, it's the same as Wan-Bissaka for what I'm saying for Wan-Bissaka. Like if I'm calling for him to be dropped after the way he reacted to his substitution. I think again, like Antonio's performance wasn't good enough, and Ings's performance off the bench was good enough. So on that kind of merit, he should deserve to start against Newcastle away after the international break. So yeah, I mean I agree. There's a lot of players that we could put into that category as well. I'm not just saying Wan-Bissaka and Antonio, because there's been a few real poor performances in recent weeks. And you mentioned it there. The difference is not even just Ings's application, but it's also the way he made a difference physically, because this is a challenge in the 93rd minute against Braithwaite, who's an absolute giant, by the way. Ings goes 50-50 with header. He actually wins it. But what's more impressive here is the touch. Like, it comes down in the air, and he, like, the touch he has to get in front of Gay and take it away from him here is unbelievable. Like, Ings' technical ability, I think that goes under the radar a little bit. He's always been very good technically when he's come on. And that actually leads to a chance. Again, lo and behold, Paqueta a little bit deeper, plays a lovely slide pass back through to Danny Ings. And I mean, it's a fantastic save from Pickford. It really is. Like, it's set up so nicely for Ings to smack. It takes a little bit of deflection as well, and Pickford just tips it over the bar. And I'm just behind the goal there, where I sit in the stadium. So it looked like it was going in, but it was a great save from Pickford. And that was it. It was 0-0, but we've seen there, like, in 20 minutes, the difference of dropping Paqueta deeper, having runners off, players having that belief that things can change. And, having a striker, like you say, that's impacting the game, not just by creating opportunities themselves, by winning duels, but also in and around the box, and having that technical ability to get shots off and cause issues for defenses. So, look, 0-0, it wasn't the best performance at all. I think the first half was pretty diabolical. Like, the application from the team was awful. The setup was wrong. I'd say the last 20 minutes of the game is where we saw the best of West Ham. And there has to be signs there for Lopetegui that this is the way we need to play moving forwards. But what do you take away? What's your main takeaway from it, Sloth, before we get into our man of the match?
I think the main takeaway is just how awful we looked for such a long period of the game. Like, it's a total lack of a game plan, and it's this idea of possession for possession's sake instead of actually using the ball when you have it to your own advantage.
I mean, we had 49% possession as well. Not even like we dominated.
It was awful. We made an Everton side who was struggling look like, they were the home side. And I don't know how David Sullivan could have watched that and gone, I've made the right decision here. It was awful.
Financially, it has.
Yeah, exactly. And I think from the 70th minute onward, we looked a bit brighter. We looked like we could go on and win it. But I think that would have been unfair on Everton, to be totally honest. But also, I want to give a quick shout out to Guilherme. I think when he came on, he also offered something different. He offered just electric pace and a willing runner. And I think that's, hopefully going to shut up a few of the voices that have been very critical of his transfer. And I think when he came on, he offered us something that we've been talking about for ages, where it is just someone who will instantly blitz past a player with their pace and look to get their head up and look to do something. So I was really impressed with his little cameo. And I think if we can continue to try and make positive changes, then there is something there. Like, that final 20 minutes showed that there is potential for the group of players. But the problem is, at the moment, there's no consistent application of that potential. And it's awful to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, look, we've got the international break now. Everyone can breathe, take a couple of weeks away from West Ham, which will be nice. But then we come back, we go to St. James's Park, then we have Arsenal at home. So it doesn't get any easier for the rest of this month. But December, we do have like 4 or 5 really winnable games, like games we have to be winning or, getting some really good points from, if Lopetegui is going to stay as manager. But yeah, I think we both agreed as well. Somerville definitely man of the match in this game. Definitely the brightest spark on the pitch. Ran himself into the ground, really. You could see how knackered he was and got cramp when he came off for Luis Guilherme at the end of the game. Defensively, massively important with that block on Decore within the first 10 minutes. Created our best chances, hit the post, very unlucky to not score. So yeah, definitely deserves props for his performance as well. And we've seen Somerville, the brightness of what he can bring. And I thought Kilman as well had another solid game, and consistently is probably the only defender putting in those solid performances at the back at the moment. So yeah, that's going to be all for the review. It was a point against Everton, an absolute dire game to watch. And I absolutely hated watching it back to get these highlights for the review show. But if you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, as that massively helps us out. And Sloth, until the next one,
come on, you irons.